So hello and welcome to our conference on grassroots conservation. My name is Luke.
And my name is Ali.
Cool, and we have recorded some great guests for you today. We recorded them a few weeks ago now, and this will be the first time we're actually going to look back on the recordings, and we're just going to enjoy them ourselves and hope that you enjoy them too.
Okay, so our first guest we're really honoured to have is Lawrence Zikusoka from Conservation Through Public Health NGO, straight from Uganda in Africa. Lawrence is a co-founder with his wife, Dr. Gladys Kalima Zikusoka, who is a wildlife vet. Lawrence himself has 15 years of experience of international cross-function experience and his former work with the United Nations. He's a winner at the World Summit Awards for Inclusion and Empowerment, and has been interviewed by BBC, TV Uganda and Tusk. He set up as a sister sort of offshoot of the NGO Conservation Through Public Health, Gorilla Conservation Coffee, which is a social enterprise which supports smallholder farmers around Bawindi in Penetrator Forest, which is their home, and also home to the IUCN mountain gorillas. So the whole approach is a One Health approach of humans coexisting healthily with wildlife, and every bag of coffee. Well, it means essentially that the farmers get a fair price, premium price actually for their coffee, and also each bag the revenue contributes to the conservation of mountain gorillas in that area, which is Diane Fossey's sort of legacy as well. So it's keeping that going. So yeah, that's it. That's our first guest.
Right, let's roll the video and enjoy it.
Really great to have you with us today. We're really privileged. So thank you so much for giving up your time. Really appreciate it. So just kind of kick off with just a bit of an icebreaker, really. So if you were an animal, if you could choose to be an animal rather than a human, what would you choose to be?
That's a great question, and I think honey badger is good. I like
honey badger.
Yeah.
When it's fallen, it gets up.
Yeah.
It doesn't give up. Has a very strong personality. I liken myself to a honey badger if I was choose to be one.
That's great.
Yeah, I like that. Good choice.
Do you want to do the next question, Luke?
Yeah, so if you could just talk to us a little bit about your organization, that would be really great.
Absolutely. Conservation Through Public Health, or ctph.org, is working on improving biodiversity conservation and community health and well-being in and around Africa's protected areas. And we started out in Bawindi Impenetrable National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And actually yesterday was World Wildlife Day 2021. Really, the story of conservation through public health started a long time ago when Dr. Gladys, our founder and CEO, was working as the first veterinary officer for the Uganda Wildlife Authority and set up a whole department dedicated to going around all the parks in the country and reserves, taking a look at animals and their welfare. Obviously, over time, it led to her working more with communities. And in 1996, while she was working at UWA, the Wildlife Authority, they came across a disease outbreak in the mountain gorillas. It was due to scabies. And unfortunately, this led to the death of an infant gorilla. And the scabies were suspected to come from community members who live in close proximity to endangered mountain gorillas. This also happened again in 2000, 2001 and 2002, but this time around, thank goodness, no mountain gorillas died and they were treated accordingly. So really the work of conservation through public health is looking at 2 or 3 main areas. We are looking at wildlife health monitoring, human public health, and alternative livelihoods. Because we see that you can't improve the health and welfare of people if you don't also look at the animals, and vice versa. And traditionally, organizations have been looking at them separately. Health does health, conservation does conservation. And in our experience of 17 years since we started conservation through public health, we see that win-win situations occur when you combine efforts together. Thank you.
Wow,
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much. So our next question really is, we'd just like to know what your role is in the organisation. And I think you were a co-founder, weren't you, with your wife Gladys?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. It started out with a $100 donation. I was a university student studying a master's in telecom at SUNY Institute of Technology in New York. And Dr. Gladys was pursuing her master's in zoological medicine and a vet residency at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And, you know, as poor students, it was quite difficult to put together $100 each. And that's how it started. I started out in fundraising. I still play a role in fundraising. But more to the point, as a co-founder, my expertise is in the tech side. So a lot of work that we do on the tech and the data analysis and collection, and of course, engaging in new partnerships. These are all the areas that I'm passionate about. And even more increasingly now with our brand called Gorilla Conservation Coffee. This is available in the UK as well. Working quite well with partners there, including Vicky Wendell from Money Road Beans in Maidenhead. So that's how it kind of started. Started off, we had a strategic planning workshop in Bwindi in the research section of the park, gathered all these stakeholders together for buy-in. And that's even before we had a logo, and that was 17 years ago. So we've been running this time, we've had some impact, and recently we're increasing our scope and also the number of conservation areas that we work in. But our base is really at Bwindi and Penetrable National Park.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible to start and to just grow like that. That's amazing.
How early on in your life did you kind of think that was something that you wanted to be involved with, like conservation and be a part?
On my side, my story is not as compelling as Dr. Gladys's, but in my case, I kind of had an affinity to mountains and the oceans. As a child, I spent a stint on the Isle of Wight at Bembridge School, and that was quite interesting because it was quite hilly and it was a kind of pristine environment. I also spent a little time in Cyprus and around the Mediterranean Sea. But when I was an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer in Helena, working with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, so there we were really dealing quite a lot with the natural environment. That was places like Bozeman, Missoula, places like Corvallis on the Bilibert Valley, the Gallatin Range where there's the Glacier National Park. So of course, in my impressionable 20s, I got very interested in the great outdoors. And those are the moments that inspired me. And then as I matured, you know, eventually when Dr. Gladys and I met, she was sharing with me her work, and I got even more motivated about it. And that was as early as 1999. And so subsequent to that, you know, we went our separate ways and then got back together in 2003 to start Conservation Through Public Health. It's an award-winning 501c3 in the US. It's also registered in Uganda as an NGO. We have lots of supporters that are able to buy gorilla conservation coffee, stay at the gorilla conservation camp in Bwindi, visit us at the Gorilla Conservation Cafe in Entebbe, which is Uganda's first conservation cafe. And what really I like best about our job, or my job at this particular stage, because it's not in startup phase anymore, is really building up teams under us who will take on the legacy. So happy to say that we're, predominantly it's, women-led scientist organization, which is great. A woman of color is at the helm of this organization, and she commands the respect that has been proven over time through her achievements. And I think working with such a team is kind of the best thing about my work, and really mentoring the younger people that are going to come in once we're no longer in the management of this organization. In terms of tips for conservation, it's really important when you look at that question of conservation success. There's pretty much 4 areas that we've been adhering to. On one level, it's definitely about listening to community. A lot of times, nonprofits come in and they're saying, yeah, we've got the solution. No, it's actually better to listen to the community, and they can actually advise you on the solution. This has been evidenced in a number of ways, particularly when we were shaping and developing our human and public health programs and wildlife health monitoring programs. Even more so, engaging stakeholders. I know a lot of people want to work in a silo, but you've got to work with the community, you've got to work with local government, federal government, international governments. You've got to work with people on the ground to get the job done. And so that's so important, engagement of stakeholders, because ultimately, if you do those 3 right, then you get buy-in and you go way much further than if you try to do it in isolation. It's like common saying, right? There's no I in team. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Do you get involved with sort of education of wildlife in schools in your area, in the community there? Is there anything sort of happening there?
That's a good question. We did start something on a pilot basis a couple of years back with conservation education through sport. So in the rainforest, people want to play a lot of football.
Yeah.
And, apart from scoring goals, you have to answer questions, quiz questions around conservation. So yes, we had started something like that through the Bwindi Impenetrable Kids League, which is a conservation through sport initiative. I'm happy to share more on that. It's still in its infancy.
That's really great. That's really interesting. Yeah. Do you have what are your sort of immediate goals? Have you, is it all just sort of ticking along? Have you got some sort of goals that you're working towards?
Yes, we do have a number of interventions. Really, the focus now is on increasing, there's a sense of urgency to act now. We've identified about 2 or 3 areas that we're focusing on as our interventions. And this has been really inspired or been fast-tracked as a consequence of C19. So the first area is around provision of ready-to-grow gardens for vulnerable households. These are households that are in and around Bwindi and Penetrable Park. For like $12, one can have a garden that's set up, which has very good food and nutritional value. The other thing that we're doing quite aggressively is continuing to train the gorilla guardians. You may have heard about them on our website, and also through Global Giving and Boomerang. So that's also important because those teams go out and are the educators for everyone, the youth, the elderly, the stakeholders that we talked about a few moments ago. So that's really something that we're focusing on. Thirdly, when we work with these village health and village health and conservation teams, they're actually also information stewards. That's something that we've been focusing on. Of course, with respect to social distancing and C19, all those team members are wearing their masks. Finally, we're looking at the engagement of the community members in alternative livelihoods And that here again is where this guerrilla conservation coffee comes in.
Mhm.
Guerrilla conservation coffee again started by listening to the farmers or smallholder farmers that are living around Burundi. Historically, they were not getting a fair price in a market. So through consultation with smallholder farmers, these are farmers that have about half an acre of land, maximum of an acre, and they are looking for ways to protect environment and also, of course, have a livelihood.
How many farmers do you have there now?
When we started with 75. We have a couple of model farmers. We've registered over 500.
Wow.
Everyone is at their different stage of maturity. But I think the message here is that apart from the coffee being single origin, 100% Arabica, it's also able, Guerrilla Conservation Coffee as an organization, to donate money back to CTPH to run its main programs, wildlife health monitoring, human public health, that kind of thing. So that I find is very different model. It's about conservation, not so much about coffee.
Yeah.
We're happy to say that in the United Kingdom, through our partnership with Money Row Beans, Vicky and her team are doing a phenomenal job. And I'm happy that you're also talking to her, Ali, to see what can be done in your network. So that's really great. Thank you.
Fab. That's amazing. You got any more questions, Luke?
I was just going to say, you mentioned about the guerrilla conservation coffee in the UK. How do we get a hold of it?
Yes.
How do we get a hold of it in the UK? Do you know where it's sold?
To order your bag of Guerrilla Conservation Coffee in the United Kingdom, please visit moneyrowbeans.com.
Great.
Thank you for
I'm going to try some.
taking gorillas one step at a time.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Wow, so that was really insightful. With regards to the coffee, I've actually got examples here. And what we'll do is we'll put a link to where you can buy the coffee in the description of the program. And I have just finished drinking a cup of said coffee.
Did you enjoy it? What's it like?
Amazing. Actually, it really is. So thinking sort of Blue Mountain coffee from Jamaica.
Ooh.
It is stunning, this coffee. It's just, I mean, on the side it says coffee is wet processed, hand picked and roasted. Each cup has a unique aroma with hints of caramel, butter and almond. It's really smooth, but it's got that real coffee hit. It's really difficult to describe. You'd have to sort of really taste it. So I'm doing some work now with Guerrilla Conservation Coffee as a representative for the UK with Money Row Beans. But as I say, we'll put the link in the description. But it really is incredible, and it's just so amazing that you know that it's helping directly in the conservation of gorillas, but also it's really helping the community there. So it's real fair trade. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and it was great to hear about the conservation through public health organization, charity that's been set up, and we'll put the link for the website in the description of the video, because it's really interesting to go over there and see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, CTPH are really all about one health, so that's humans and wildlife existing together, coexisting, you know, happily and healthily. So it's definitely the way forward.
Great, what a good start.
So Tim is our next guest. He is a food management sales manager in his working life. He is a very enthusiastic hobby gardener, and he's also a very strong wildlife enthusiast, and he lives in Torbay in Devon. In his spare time, as I say, when he's not working, he takes pride in caring for his plants in his garden. He particularly likes the fact that he's planted and encourages sort of more growth of plants that encourage birds and pollinators. pretty much passed down from the passion of his father in South Wales, where Tim grew up. He was also inspired by his late next door neighbour when he moved in, and takes huge pleasure as well in watching the wildlife that visit his garden, and enjoys the ebb and flow of the seasons essentially as well.
Cool. Let's listen to what Tim's got to say. Fun to start off with. So,
Yeah.
Tim, if you could be an animal, any animal, what would you be and why?
Oh, yeah. It's got to be a tiger, I think.
Yeah.
That goes back to my childhood. I think I was mesmerized by the one from Jungle Book. I was so mesmerized I've forgotten his name. Shere Khan.
Shere
Not
Khan.
because he was horrible, but just the image of it, not his personality, but
Yeah.
having all that lovely freedom to roam around in, and food aplenty. That's good enough for me.
And being
Yeah.
king of
And
the jungle as
hopefully
well.
look magnificent.
And being king of the jungle at the same time.
Well, that would be an added bonus, I think.
He was very impressive. I always
Oh,
remember.
rather.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. Just
Such a great film, isn't it?
especially when he put that long claw out to pick the python's nose. That stuck with me.
Yeah, he scratched it, didn't
Not that
he?
I would do that, of course, but I would use my powers for good.
Great.
Such a great film.
Cool.
Okay.
Great. So the next question is, can you tell us about your grassroots conservation that you do? So I understand that you have a lot of plants in your garden that encourage pollinators and birds.
Oh yes. I mean, the house. It's a mid terrace, two bedroom house with effectively 5 square meters at the back and the front, which is mine, if you like. Mostly grass with a few borders, but the initial planting, there was a little bit here to start with, but I suppose I put my own little mark on it. Initially, it was to get evergreen for a bit of privacy at the front and back,
Yeah.
mostly the front. So privacy, I looked at gorse, which got a little bit out of control. So I had to rethink that. And pyrocanthus, I can't remember which is the best, but minimal work. But yeah, to definitely encourage bees. And I got the old lavender. Foxgloves when they come out. That's one of my favorites. Sweet peas. Simple stuff, quite hardy, because the soil here is pretty rubbish, to be honest. There's 70s houses, and all they did was put I don't even know if there's any topsoil, but it's very, very clayy, if that's the right expression, with lots of stones. So you need fairly hardy, I think, plants with just need a trim every now and again. And I try and let a bit of the grass, sort of 2 or 3 meters squared out of sight, grow to hopefully encourage the insects for the birds. Put the bird feeders out and things like that. But
that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, and quite recently as well, which is something I didn't know, was that you can get certain plants to encourage, not through the winter, but as deep into the winter as you can for bees. So that's something like a winter honeysuckle, things like that.
So I have to say, and it's for the listeners as well, if you could actually send some pictures of the garden. I know you've sent me a little video clip of the robin there, but if you could at some point when you get some free time, could you send some pictures? Because actually, for the benefit of the listeners and Luke, I've actually been to the gardens quite a few times, and although Tim says it's a small space and the soil issue variable and everything, it's actually incredible because it's very urban there. It's a very urban area, but you just would not believe, like, one of the bushes there, I think I counted about 30 bees at one time. And the birds, obviously they know now there's berries there and all the rest of it, and it's become sort of really established. But it is quite astounding when you actually go into the garden and you actually see the activity that is actually going on there. Can't even get that across strongly enough. So
Okay, yeah,
just
yeah,
if you could send some pictures
yeah,
as
for
well,
sure.
that might sort of, and then we can sort of slot them in when we do the introduction, when we do the live bit, we can
Yeah,
sort of show the pictures and introduce you that way. And then, yeah, it
yeah.
is actually quite incredible.
It's a bit barren at the moment because I've cut back. I mean, like that bush, it was here when I moved. So I don't know what it is. I don't even know what type it is. I thought it was some sort of clematis, but I don't think it is.
Hmm,
Something. But I'll send some Yeah, I can do some pictures. That's not a
thank
problem.
you. So Tim's, I've moved house recently, and I'm starting to do my garden. And like the grassroots thing also is that Tim has given me quite a lot of self-set and cuttings of the
Mm,
say some of the plants from his garden, and they're now starting to become established in my
Right.
garden that I
yes.
moved in. So that's like a way of carrying on and recycling and carrying on the sort of gauntlet, really.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's really cool.
So, Tim, when did you kind of first have an interest in horticulture, or just kind of making your garden, your space friendly for wildlife?
Um, I was, without question, I think my dad used every millimeter or fraction of an inch in those days to grow overwhelmingly vegetables, but a lot of flowers as well. Um, and me and my older brother we're not allowed, but we used to do all the sort of digging up the potatoes and things like that. There's nothing like potatoes straight from the ground,
Yeah,
or any vegetable really. And he was quite experimental as well. He'd experiment with different stuff. Yeah, so that's where it stemmed from, really. And I think he spent not every waking hour, but as much as he possibly could in there, either just sadly smoking in there as well, but
Mm,
mostly, yeah, quite experimental really as well. I think the soil must have been better in South Wales than here at the time, but I used to get loads of sunflowers, things like that. And there was, I suppose my mum had an influence on the flowery side, if you like, and my dad on the veg. So
yeah. It's
yeah,
often family, isn't it, that makes that initial
yeah.
first spark.
I suppose that was about I guess a third, probably about 25, 30 meters by 10-meter garden, mostly used with a path up the middle. So nothing massive, but more than enough.
Yeah. Have you kind of found anything really interesting, unusual in your garden?
Yes, actually, an aubergine, which appeared from nowhere.
Surprise one.
Last year or the year before, I can't remember. And I just remember putting it on Facebook, and some of my horticultural friends, oh, that's an aubergine you got there. And I had no idea because it was only however, but that where that came from, I just have no idea.
That's
That's bizarre
amazing.
because, as far as I'm aware, your neighbour Carol didn't have any aubergine plants, did she?
No, but I mean, I think from it could be from bird deposits. It could be
Yeah.
blown in because I am reasonably high up, so there's a lot of wind around. Yeah, but stuff I haven't got a clue what it is self set as well.
That's
Usually
really interesting.
flowers,
Love
usually
that.
flowers
It's just such a
stabilized.
joy, isn't it, when that
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah, I mean, I get to know what's the weed, and as well as there's quite a few ash and sycamore trees, and they're always thousands of the seeds come over here, so you can obviously get rid of those when you see them, but as
Mm,
they grow, I sort of recognize what they look like, so they come straight out.
yeah.
And a lot of the weeds are but if I don't recognize it as an obvious weed, I let it carry on, really.
And see what happens, see what
Yeah,
develops. That's
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I've got again some self-setting forget-me-nots, which are rather wonderful.
Ooh, I'll have some
So
of those if you wanna put them my way.
I can't remember. Yeah, it is forget-me-nots, isn't it?
Yeah,
Beautiful
thanks.
flowers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
What
they're
do
the
you
sort of
use?
self-set type things.
yeah.
I mean,
I get everywhere.
anything I don't go out and say, oh right, I'm going to plant this, that, and the other. I mean,
It's quite
being
organic
being
the
a
way you
frugal type, if I see something reduced significantly in a garden center, I'll give it a go.
you're
I
quite
think,
organic in your sort of the way you sort of do it, don't you? You sort of let nature sort of do its
Yeah,
thing, and yeah.
yeah. I mean, some of it was, like I say, purposeful to as a when I moved in, there were 3 cats next door. And part of it was hopefully as a cat deterrent as much as you can deter the blessed things. Yes, you can quote me on that. But of course, they're lovely things as well. And like I say, with the berries, the blackbirds adore the pyracantha berries. And then well, yeah, it's a living plant, isn't it?
That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
I think
functional and beautiful.
is it my turn for the next question? I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next question to you is, what would you say is like the biggest reward of what you actually do with your grassroots conservation? What would you say is the best thing about? I know we've talked.
No question to me. Encouraging the bees is my is the biggest thing for
So that
me.
gives you a lot of joy. Yeah.
Oh right. Oh yes, definitely. Especially when the foxgloves are around. Seeing them
And they go
disappear.
right inside, don't
Oh,
they?
rather, you can see it, and it is it is. I know it's a bell or a speaker, whatever, which megaphone
Yeah.
type thing, but you can actually hear the difference as they go in. It gets deeper and deeper, and yeah, they come out covered in pollen, which is rather lovely. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
That's fab.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting as well is that they know the ones that have been pollinated, so you can sort of see them go in and straight back out to another one.
Yeah.
They're very industrious. So I suppose that's the efficiency is quite incredible.
Definitely.
But yeah, everything. You can never have too many foxgloves. They're my go-to.
Yeah.
And I think once you get foxgloves, you pretty much got them everywhere, haven't you?
Well, I've got some of your
every other
foxgloves.
year, I think they grow.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're
I don't know the term for it, but yeah,
perennial.
once you got them, you got them basically until you dig them up, which ain't
Well,
gonna
hopefully
happen.
I'll be okay then, because I've actually got some of your foxgloves. So
Yeah,
I'll look forward to that.
I think the key with that is just to try and keep them thinned out, because they will go wild, which is
Yeah.
what anyone wants really, because you want other stuff I think to flourish. But
Yeah.
as long as you've got 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the garden. But
So that's really nice then. So a lot of time as well, apart from like working in your garden, is actually you actually spend a lot of time actually observing and watching the way you described the bees going into the bells of the flowers. So
oh
that,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
yeah, that's really nice.
And a similar one as well, which I actually saw on the telly, I think, was with snapdragons.
Hmm.
The bigger the bee, they sort of weigh down part of the petal and go in,
Oh
which
wow.
is quite, yeah. And he found that out last year. Obviously, you watch them, but until someone says these are ideal for bigger bees, the big bumblebee bees or
Oh,
whatever they are,
okay. Yeah.
so they actually physically weigh down part of the so they can get in,
Yeah.
Mm.
which I sort of tried to observe and did a couple of
Yeah.
times. So, yeah.
Just
Cool. So just finish with the last kind of question, although you've given one of your top tips, which around the foxgloves. But is there any other things that you would kind of recommend, kind of budding gardeners or horticulturists that they could do, or things that you could have maybe told your past self to do, if you see what I mean, that would have
Yeah.
saved you some bother?
Definitely lavender, because you can put that in pots, and I think you can buy it very cheap, isn't it? Lavender.
Yeah.
mm.
I think is there is it like a French one or anything? I don't want to be
I don't know.
sound like a Brexiteer or anything here, but I think that French one, it doesn't encourage the bees as much. I think the sort of native, if you like, British lavender.
Yeah, that rings a
I
bell.
tend to find that is incredible. It lasts longer and it does encourage bees more. And if people are not sure, they can leave it in the pot, and if it doesn't work, try it like that. But
Mm.
definitely lavender, because it's easy to grow. Would
Mm.
encourage, and once you've got them in there, I think they keep coming back, from what I understand. Um, Interesting question, that second bit about you
Yeah.
have to
What
save
you?
me a bit of work. Not really. I'm pretty much give it a bash, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's no
Absolutely.
great, oh, I wish I'd done this. I mean,
Yeah.
wish I hadn't done that, or wish I'd done this differently. No, not really.
I think
Brilliant.
Just a plot,
sort of what,
just an enthusiastic plodder, I think, who enjoys
yeah.
the fruits of one's labours, I think it's fair to say.
Oh,
I
brilliant.
think it comes across is that a lot of people, like, unlike you, a lot of people get really stressed out about what they do in their gardens and
I
what they
think
put
they
in.
do.
Yeah,
And I think your attitude is probably the best way to do it. Is just
Mm.
let nature take its course, see what comes up. You know, just sort of, I think that's the best way, really. And I think that's
Yeah,
more fruitful.
no pun intended, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never spend an extortionate amount on. You see some of the price of some of the stuff in garden
Yeah.
centres or whatever, and you think, crikey, that's a lot of money.
You can do a lot with like self-set, and it's sort of nature's way, isn't it? Nature will
Yeah,
always find the best
yeah,
way if you kind of let it, you know, just be a bit more relaxed about it and just sort of let it come. Yeah, that's good.
I think so.
Yeah, that's
great.
brilliant.
All right,
Well,
guys.
yeah, thank you ever
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. My
That's
pleasure.
well, that was really great. Again, that was really insightful. Amazing about the bees and everything. Just and actually, I really enjoying because since we did the recording of that, it's been a while now, and obviously spring is springing, and the plants that I mentioned before that are planted in my garden now from Tim's garden are coming to fruition. And Tim comes over and he potters about the garden. So it's amazing how I don't think, apart from a blossom tree that I bought, a little sapling, I haven't bought any plants. Tim's just given me cuttings and everything. So that's just literally grassroots conservation, isn't it? It's all been beginning
Definitely.
at home and all homegrown.
Yeah,
Fab.
it was amazing how you recorded it on a boat as well.
Oh, yes. I must just explain about that. So at the time, and actually now as well, I'm not sitting at a desk. My laptop is on like a sort of laptop tray thing. And I think my knees were moving. So I'll try really hard. So it's quite funny. It looked like I was on a boat. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Tim. I think we'll press on with the next one.
Yep.
Okay, so next we've got Liz from Newquay Marine Group, and she's going to tell us a bit about what the group does and what they stand for. They're very active around Newquay and have made a real difference in the local area in a relatively small space of time. So it'll be great to hear what she's got to say.
Definitely. It's a funny one. So if you could be any creature / animal or anything mammal, what would you be?
Well, funnily enough, I had this conversation the other day when I was enjoying a really nice walk, and I decided I would be a bird. And I think I went with an eagle, golden eagle in the end. I think just that flying, feeling of flying, it's got to be a bird. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be a big bird. I want to soar, I want to glide. So yeah, golden eagle for me.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd love to swap lives with the golden eagle just for a few days.
In the Lake District, preferably, I think.
How amazing would that be? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So the next question is if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about Newquay Marine Group, just for those who might not know, who might be watching.
So Newquay Marine Group it's a voluntary community group. It was set up by Laura and Gabby back in, I think it was about 2012, 13, something like that. And obviously started off very small, and then Gabby had a baby, and Laura needed a bit of help, so I was very keen to help, and I started by running the Newquay Beach Care side of Newquay Marine Group, which is sort of like the sister group really that just deals with litter picks and all things littery. And then steadily the membership's grown, our outreach has grown. We now have groups approaching us, so we work quite a lot with the Environment Agency and the council, and other groups, the Strandings Network and the college and the students. As we've grown, We've become much more prominent in town, and we've been working with the schools. And yeah, it's all voluntary. It takes up both Laura and I work full time, and it takes up a lot of our time, but we're passionate about what we do. And when you see the difference that a voluntary group can make, then it's just worthwhile, and we love it. We love doing what we do.
That's brilliant. Great answer.
So could you tell us what your role is in the group? Do you have like a defined role, or do you do sort of bits of everything?
Well, so as I say, I do all the litter picking. I timetable them all in and organise those, and we have one a month of those. We also operate like a flash mob thing. So if someone sees an awful mess on the beach, or big nets or ropes or whatever, they can just message us and we'll get a group together and sort that out. So that's very much me. And then we kind of divide and conquer, really. I think Laura and I know where our skills and weaknesses lie. Laura's really good at forming links and doing all the IT side, and sort of setting up little subgroups, which we've done over the lockdown period. I'm very much more creative. I get involved with the schools a bit more, get involved with the Duke of Edinburgh volunteers. Yeah, my role is I'm officially the co-chair and Laura is the chair, but we very much just work together, and you know, we just seem to naturally pick up the tasks and emails that interest us, and it balances itself out at the moment.
Yeah, that's really good. Wow.
My next question was about kind of when you started to get involved, but I think you've already answered that, so I will ask you.
Well, it was a bit. I went to Newquay College, and did my degree there. Sort of in my 40s, I finally took to studying, and I obviously got involved in the nearest group to Newquay at the time was St Agnes Voluntary Marine Group. Newquay didn't have one, and I remember talking to Becky Allen at the college, saying, I don't understand why Newquay doesn't have a group. It really, really needs one. And I left college, and then about a year later, Bex remembered that conversation. She emailed me and she said, I've heard there's these two people setting up a group, and she sort of put me in touch, and went from there, really.
Brilliant. I was also just going to ask kind of what was like the origin of your interest in kind of the coast or conservation, that kind of thing.
I think I've always had it, but it really developed when I learnt to dive, and once I learnt to scuba dive and worked my way up through PADI and became a dive master, and just dived all over the world and just loved the wildlife and wanted to know more. And then when I found myself in Newquay, quite by accident, I realised I could do my degree at Newquay College down the road, and jumped at it and just wanted to learn more. And it's just opened so many doors since I did that.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say that the kind of most rewarding part of what you do in Newquay Marine Group is? A kind of an overall, like an overarching sort of reward?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think one of the things is we kind of run the group as I was just mentioning. When it's not lockdown, we're very much out there with people and making friends and relationships. And I think one part of the best thing is that we're like a family. We really know people, even when they move away, maybe from Cornwall, we're still in touch with them. They're still members, people still following us, and they'll come to the meetings on Zoom. It's really like we've got this really nice family, and people are always welcome into that family. I think the other thing is just the changes that happen in and around that we've been part of. So from being involved with the Yellow Fish campaign, and which is all about highlighting that the drains, some of the drains lead directly to the sea.
Okay.
And be careful what you put down, and you know, making fatbergs out of suet and going off to show people who didn't know anything about that and actually may change their behaviour. To just being involved in some data input about things that maybe wouldn't get reported, and just being that font where we get to hear things and we know who to pass them on to possibly have change.
That's really
a bit rambling.
No, there's lots of aspects.
Hopefully there's something in that.
That's really interesting, very inspiring.
Yeah, sounds like there's so many aspects to your role and kind of what you enjoy doing. It sounds like a great thing to
it's
do.
a roller coaster, really. You never know what kind of emails are coming in.
Yeah.
You know, you just get requests and people asking you to do things. It varies daily. I was looking at lampposts today with a lady from the council. I mean,
Yeah. It must be really
Wow.
nice being at the you're kind of like at the coalface, really making a difference.
yeah, and I think because we're voluntary and we're not, you know, funded in any way, we're you know, we've got no ties to anyone. We're just true to ourselves. And there's no ulterior motive, there's no, you know, egos. It's just, we just want to protect and maintain and educate about the marine environment, and that's it, bottom line. So we don't have anything to prove.
Yeah,
We can just be ourselves.
Brilliant.
it's like a crew of like-minded people. It's always a
Yeah,
nice
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So final question really. Do you have any tips or bits of information that you could pass on to people that might be watching, who might be kind of budding conservationists or interested in making a difference in their area? What could they do, that kind of thing?
Well, I would say join a group.
Yeah.
Make yourself known. Come up with some ideas and proposals, because there's funding out there for, if you can find it and you've got a good proposal and a good idea and back it up with some evidence and some data, there's stuff out there, and a group can support you to do that. Well, what else would I say? I would say individuals can make a difference as well. So perhaps if you're not near a group, or your group is not functioning properly or hasn't built up yet, an individual can make all the difference, particularly with the social media platforms that are around now. You can build up a following and invoke change and do amazing things just on your own if you want to. If you find something that interests people, you can do it.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, that was Liz. Great to hear how she got involved.
Good tips as well on if somebody wants to get involved as well, what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, really practical actually.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that one. And very relevant to me. I'm still living in Newquay, so I learnt a few things from that interview as well. Cool. So next we've got Steve from Newquay Orchard. This is a really good interview, but there is a bit of background noise because Steve could only find the cafe as it was being put together, and there was a bit of noise as people were kind of getting it ready for opening. It is now open. It's a lovely place up there. You can go and get a drink and some food and sit outside on the green. But yeah, Steve's going to explain a bit about his role and what he enjoys most about Newquay Orchard.
Have to say as well that Luke has actually done quite a lot of volunteering for Newquay Orchard too.
Yes, I have, although not so recently, just because things have got a bit hectic, but I'm looking forward to going back there soon.
It's great because it always seems like something's evolving there too.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
always going on. It's amazing.
It's always busy up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
A funny one. So if you could be any animal or plant, what would you be?
That's quite an easy one for me actually in terms of animals, because I'd be a shark.
Ooh.
Yeah, only because I used to work with sharks for 8-9 years, And,
Okay.
I just, it's one of my favourite animals. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and shark. Yeah.
And any
nice.
particular species of shark?
Probably have to say great whites. I think a great white, yeah. Just because I have dived with them in South Africa, and yeah, they're amazing.
Wow.
I know it's probably a lot of people say something like that, but yeah, because I have actually worked with them and been in the water with them.
No, you're the first person that's actually said that. So
Oh, really? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always side on the side of the shark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I can't imagine many people would can say they've dived with great white sharks either.
No,
Oh, yeah.
it's incredible.
It was pretty special. Yeah.
Great.
Once a lifetime.
So next one. So Steve, if you could just tell us a little bit about Newquay Orchard and kind of what it is and what it's there for, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So Newquay Orchard has been around for, well, we're entering its 6th year now. And basically it's set up, our tagline is built by the community for the community. So it's all about bringing the community together in a space which is a natural environment, helping with people's health and well-being generally. We run social programs for people to actually, take a lot of time up here and get to learn skills and things like that. But yeah, it's all about community and bringing people up together. And yeah, it seems like we're just almost constantly evolving and bringing more and more people up, which is fantastic, from all different backgrounds as well, which is possibly a little bit of a unique thing. So instead of having people in boxes and whatever else, everybody comes together in the same place and works together and learns off each other, and yeah, it's just makes it a little bit special in that respect. Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's really nice. Yeah, that's great. So our next question is, what is your role within the organisation?
So my role is the delivery coordinator. So what that means is that I'm feeding volunteers to different areas of the orchard. So we have a delivery team, which is myself and 2 delivery coordinators, and we work on the ground with the volunteers. And as volunteers get recruited, I can then feed them on into the different areas of the orchard to help with different tasks. And that could be horticulture, it could also be landscaping, it could also be woodwork. We build a lot of our own stuff as well as plant our own stuff. So if there's a need for a new bench somewhere, we can feed volunteers who have maybe a little bit of joinery skills, something like that. So there's a whole host of things. It's not just about growing food, although that's obviously the heart of it, really.
So you're logistics, really, aren't you, in the operation? Yeah.
And it's an exciting time because we've just obviously come out of our lockdown, and we've been doing one-to-one sessions, which were for people who kind of really needed a little bit of extra support just to get through it. And just opening up to small groups this week of 3 volunteers plus what we call lead volunteers. And yeah, so we kind of we're slowly opening up. Our roadmap kind of mirrors the government's roadmap. So after Easter, we'll hopefully expand a little bit more. And so, yeah, we've got so many volunteers now and people interested that we just have a waiting list at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And all this is going on, and spring is springing as well, which is really nice.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's a changing season. You can feel that. You can feel that positivity in people.
Yeah.
The equinox this weekend, and suddenly people will feel a little bit.
Yeah. Moving forward. Yeah, exactly.
Get on with this. Yeah.
Really
Nice. I was up there on Tuesday, and just seeing the changes that have been made since I was last there is incredible. It's always evolving, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
That's fab.
Cool. So next little question is kind of how long have you been in your role, Steve? I think that's the question, wasn't it, Ali? I got the right
Yeah,
one
and
there?
also I think it was and sort of how did you get involved,
That's
in the
it.
first place as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I've been in this particular role only since September of last year. However, I've been working for the Orchard for about, I worked out yesterday, 19 months. So my background really, I did some horticultural training a few years ago, permaculture training and things like that. So I've always been interested in that side of it. But I was lucky enough in my last role to get involved with social programs, and that is actually what brought me to the Orchard. A mix of the two, social programs and growing your own food, and the whole food sustainability thing. So that's kind of how I got into the Orchard, really.
Yeah.
It just evolved as more and more social programs come on board, and there's more and more need to expand on the sort of knowledge base. So we've gone from the food growing stuff to woodworking, to landscaping, to environmental issues are a big thing for us. So yeah, it's again, it's that evolving thing. It's evolving all the time, which is nice.
That's really good as well, because you're obviously bringing a lot to the table as well, which is really helpful for that organisation.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. But yeah, it's definitely, and it's great when you work with the volunteers. We've had a lot of new volunteers on site this week, and we've had some great feedback from them. And being able to share that knowledge of that you built up over time. Really nice to see. See the reaction from people.
Yeah, that's really nice. So our fifth question is sort of what would you say for you personally is the kind of the best thing about your role, what you do there? What are your sort of your personal rewards, and also sort of in a wider sort of context as well? What do you feel is the best bit? You could put it in a nutshell, which is difficult, I know.
Yeah, it is because there are so many positives to a job like this. I opened up my emails this morning to see a message from our change coach, who had again a new volunteer this week, had specifically spoken to our change coach and said what a great experience she'd had on her first session, and specifically mentioned me, which is when you get feedback like that, it's brilliant. So being involved directly with those volunteers and helping to encourage them in horticulture or the environment, or just being outside for their own well-being, green therapy, garden therapy, whatever you want to call it. Seeing the results of that is probably one of the best things, and the things that keeps you positive. And I mean, the first lockdown was crazy for everybody, wasn't it? Everything went into shutdown, and it was at a really crucial time for us. So March, obviously, when we're trying to sow things, and actually this building that we're sat in now is only just being finished, and the whole landscaping aspects. I mean, Luke saw the other day how much it's come on. That all sort of the timing was terrible with lockdown. So we went from having 30 volunteers a day helping to create this amazing space to having 3 members of staff, and that's it. So it was a very strange time, and then we had to shut completely to volunteers for a while, and the feedback from volunteers was like, we missed it so much. We need to do this. When we opened back up after Christmas, we opened to the rule of 6 to start with. But then obviously Newquay's numbers spiked just after Christmas and New Year, so we had to drop that to 1-to-1s. And we've always worked with Public Health England as well. So Jenny, one of our directors, general managers, is constantly in touch with Public Health to make sure that we're doing things properly and keeping people as safe as we can. So
it sounds as though despite the COVID, that everything's sort of starting to work again really well, and there's no sort of lasting damage sort of from that.
No,
in a sort of material way. I mean, perhaps, people have missed out, obviously.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, we have managed to keep going and keep our volunteers positive, and it's been a learning curve for everybody, hasn't it? Because we've a lot of organisations generally have moved to a lot of online stuff. So we did a lot of online content to keep our volunteers interested and engaged,
Yeah.
and we were able to monitor them through that as well. So every time that somebody was engaged, we could see that. And we kept putting out lots of regular Facebook posts as well, encouraging them to keep in touch with us and let us know
Keeping
how
that
they
link going. Yeah.
Yeah. And then with the whole, we had a little thing that I came up with over Christmas, the Avenue of Hope, which was kind of almost like a positivity patch for generally our volunteers, but general community public as well to get involved with. So we turned our espalier into the Avenue of Hope, so people could write comments on stones or pictures or whatever it was, just to create that little bit of 2020 is behind us, here comes 21, let's
That's
try.
really nice. That's really nice.
So that's quite a nice thing.
Brilliant.
It's all keeping in touch with those volunteers when a lot of them can't even leave the house.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So last little bit. So Steve, if you've got any tips or things that you could suggest to kind of budding conservationists or horticulturalists that they could do, is there anything you could think of, or maybe something from your own kind of career trajectory? Because I know you've worked in aquariums and things, and it can be a difficult industry to get into. So any tips for people
to getting into the industry?
Yeah, or just general.
Yeah.
Okay. Or just generally, what can people do at home? Either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at home, I mean, obviously, it's a massive topic, and it's a massive, the environmental impact that's happening at the moment is a massive problem all over the world. But and some people, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a help not to look at the bigger picture right now, because it can get, wow, what can I do?
Yeah.
And you can only do your little bit that you can do at home, but so long as everybody does one little bit, eventually it will chip away at the bigger problem. People think it's a waste of time recycling. It's a waste of time doing this. But if everybody thought like that, we wouldn't get anywhere. So just do that one little bit at home, whether it is recycling, whether it is if you've got space for a little compost bin, encourage your neighbours to use one big compost bin if you haven't got enough. Things like that, involving your own family and friends in community, in little community projects. Just do it together. You could even do things like bird spotting. There's lots of, in terms of wildlife, there's lots of initiatives, Cornwall Wildlife Trust, all that kind of stuff. You go on their website, you can log sightings. There's a hedgehog sighting thing, so you can monitor the wildlife coming through your garden, all that kind of stuff. And professionally, I always encourage people to try and get out there and just do it and do work experience where possible. Having worked in the aquarium industry, every year we see thousands of students coming out of uni with amazing grades and knowledge. But actually, if you can back that up with a bit of work experience as well, the practical skills, because what people forget is, it's brilliant to be able to dissect an animal and know what caused its illness and be able to treat it in future. But also, if you go into the aquarium or the zoo industry, you need also that practical skills to be able to change a pump, or look after it, the husbandry of the animals. It might be even something as simple as changing a heat lamp in a snake viver, something like that. Just understanding those practical elements of keeping animals healthy. A bit of work experience goes a long way on your CV.
Luke and I were talking about that very subject, weren't we, yesterday?
Absolutely true.
Sure to have that work experience. And also, citizen science can be an incredible tool, and I think sometimes people aren't aware that they can actually do that. But it is, like you say, just sort of, if people have an interest, is just looking up different groups and also totally get what you're saying about how if everybody just did their little bit, that actually makes a
Huge
massive
difference.
difference to the
Yeah.
bigger picture.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Really.
yeah. It would be great, wouldn't it, just to encourage everybody just to change one tiny little thing in their household.
Exactly.
One tiny little thing. Yeah, that's
Right.
it.
Yeah, because even if you live in a flat and you don't have a garden, you can still put
Yeah.
a bird feeder up against the window. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just little things go a long way. I totally agree with that. Yeah, so again, brilliantly insightful. Steve's really down to earth. Got some fantastic tips there. Is even, saying about how don't get overwhelmed by the bigger picture. If everybody just does a little bit, that makes a massive difference. So an example of that is coffee grounds. I've now started putting them on the garden, saving them, and I was relaying this to my daughter. So one of my children still lives at home, and I was just saying, oh, by the way, there's a pot on the side. This is where we're putting the coffee grounds for the garden. So it's little things. It's just little things like that, and passing them on to your friends and family. You really can make a difference and get your own little world right. And if everybody just does that one little thing, it just makes everything better and brighter.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what's great about Newquay Orchard, is that you get to volunteer with so many different people who have got lots of experience and lots of tips like that, and you all get to share all this great knowledge and then learn and do better and help the environment because of it.
Yeah, and feel better as well. It's just this sense of being. It's just there's so much scientific evidence now to support that. That sort of working outside, spending time outside is just so good, especially for your mental health. It gives you a really good feeling of well-being.
Yeah, 100%.
So our next little slot is with Carly Murray, and she's the head keeper at Shaldon Wildlife Trust Zoo in Devon in the UK, in Shaldon Village. Carly is a primatologist and has had a rich work-life background in conservation. She's been head keeper at Shaldon Wildlife Trust for a number of years now, and she's very proud of the status that they have as a bastion for small zoos, making a real difference to conservation efforts alongside partner organisations such as breeding programmes. I've worked at Shaldon Zoo myself, and I'm returning again in the summer. It's actually a really special place. I think we've got about 5 questions, if that's okay, Carly. And we'll sort of ask them alternately. So if I start, it's a kind of like a little icebreaker question. It's just, if you could choose an animal, what would you choose to be?
And why?
And why, yeah.
I would be a lemur. I'd like to be a lemur. They are, so most of them are crepuscular, which means they're active more early morning, later in the sort of early evening. So they get a siesta, which I quite like the idea of, and they're quite active. They're not hindered by anything in their movement. They're a group animal. I like being around people, but not too big a group. So
sounds like,
I had a feeling you were going to say lemur. I just had the feeling.
Sounds like your spirit animal.
Yeah, it's totally my spirit animal. I started working with lemurs when I first started in the zoo industry, so they'll always have a special place in my heart, I think.
Oh.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah, if you could just tell us a bit about Shaldon Wildlife Trust for those people who haven't heard of it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So Shaldon Wildlife Trust is a really small zoo. We're just an acre nestled in a little village called Shaldon in Devon, with a smaller zoo in Byaza and Eaza, which we're very proud of. And we specialise in conservation of endangered species. So we have a lot of animals that you may not have seen before. We've got quite a few unusual animals. We've got the only green akuchi in the UK called Dave. He's very famous. And we've got one of only 12 civets, Alston civets, that live in the UK as well, called Leanne. So we specialise in that. We run quite a few breeding programs with a lot of our animals, because most of them, a high percentage of them, are quite endangered. So we do actively breed them as part of their breeding programs. And we actively support about 8 conservation projects that are based abroad, all over the world at the moment.
Brilliant. I hate to say, but I don't even know what an accouchie is.
No, I didn't know what one was before Dave arrived. So he's like I can only describe him as a guinea pig. So do you know what a capybara?
Adorable.
Yeah.
He's related to capybaras. So capybaras are the biggest sort of rodent. Dave is one of the smallest in that sort of category. So he's a little accouchie.
Oh, I bet loads of people would love
He's
to
real.
know about
Yeah.
that.
He's a real character as well.
He
He's
is
so lovely. Yeah, he's
Cool.
lovely.
Thank you. I'm educated.
Okay.
So the next question is, obviously we know that you're a head keeper at Shaldon Zoo. So could you just sort of describe, again, for people who don't perhaps understand what the bones of what that sort of involves?
So usually a normal head keeper in a larger zoo or collection would be sort of running the animal care department. Here at Shaldon, because we're quite a small zoo, there's only 3 full-time paid staff with 1 part-timer. So as a head keeper, I'm essentially second in command of the entire sort of workforce. So being a head keeper does encompass all the animal care. So I'm in charge of the diets, the veterinary care, filing, all of that kind of stuff, running the routines, making sure everyone's sort of kept up to scratch as best we can. But it also means that I am the volunteer coordinator. We've got one of the highest percentages of volunteers to sort of zoo size in the UK. So we've got about 30 volunteers, not all on site at any one time. So we have a few each day of the week. So I'm in charge of all of those. Also in charge of our internship program. So I sort of manage their development as they go along each year. And also my staff that are underneath me as well, I'm in charge of. And yeah, running a zoo, essentially. So not so much the operational financial side, that's the director's role, but as a head keeper, it is more the animal care side and the people side, which I do enjoy.
Wow.
Fab.
Sounds like,
Really good description. Thank you.
yeah, sounds like you have to wear many hats.
I do, yeah. I've learned a lot since coming into this role. Shaldon is just a different machine. It's just because it's quite a small zoo, so you do every day is different, and I've learned so much on the job coming from a bigger zoo where I was a deputy head of a department. I literally did those animals every day, maybe switch section occasionally, but I would never be involved with, the ordering of the food or the insects or that kind of thing, and liaising with the vet, taking animals on the vet visits and that kind of thing, and animal transfers, all those little nitty-gritty operational bits I do now as well, which I do really enjoy.
Cool, thanks. My next question is, I guess you kind of touched on it a bit there, but how did you first kind of get involved in this industry? When did you kind of know it was for you? What kind of route did you take?
So I always, as most animal lovers, we know we like animals from a young age. I initially wanted to be a vet, and I think I could have done it. I was quite academic, but I also loved my social side of things, and I loved being outdoors. So I did do a few work experience in a veterinary surgery, but I didn't like the clinical side of it, being inside, stuck indoors all the time. And I did some work experience in Africa after I left school, and I loved it. I loved being outdoors, being involved in conservation, and I just thought that meant a bit more to me, and being actively involved in something was more for me. So yeah, I went down that route after I finished uni, and I got really lucky and landed a job in working with lemurs, which is where
Brilliant.
I started.
Thank you.
That's fab. So what would you say is the best thing about your job, about your role?
Oh,
Everything.
yeah. not quite everything. There are, it's really difficult sometimes, and it can be very, very stressful because we're just such a small team. But being such a small team has its benefits. We all chip in together, we all work with each other really closely, so we're all there for each other essentially at the end of the day. I think just being a small conservation charity means a lot because we achieve so much for such a small team. It's really rewarding when we have births and things that actually actively help those animals, whether it be educating people about those animals to protect them. I think there's a massive crisis at the moment with the world, and with deforestation and the plastic pollution crisis and all of that. I think our job forms quite a big part of that education, knowing that we might lose the animals. So it's quite rewarding when you know that you're getting through to someone in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's quite a broad answer. Sorry, it's not
No,
just one.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Good. Cool. Kind of final question then is,
Yeah.
do you have any tips or bits of advice for maybe younger conservationists, who are just stepping onto the kind of the ladder of trying to get a job, or what I can do, what should I study, that kind of thing?
Yeah, my key word is persevere.
Yeah.
I always are volunteers, and it took me about 3 years to get a paid job in the industry. I mean, I was paid when I started, but I was only a seasonal worker, so I wasn't guaranteed employment. And then I volunteered. So volunteer wherever you can, essentially. I know it's difficult at the moment because of COVID, but places are accepting volunteers, and we are hopefully coming out of this now. So yeah, get as much volunteer experience, hands-on experience as you can. Try and fund yourself, so get part-time jobs any way you can to get that sort of money coming in to support yourself. And yeah, just apply to anything and everything. Don't be afraid to sort of go really far away from home for your first job. It can be really daunting going into your first zoo job, but in our industry, because in the UK, this is, if you're UK based, dotting all over the country, we've got zoos everywhere, and some of them are amazing, and you'll get different experiences at every one of them. So I think don't be afraid to go a bit further than what you thought, because otherwise you'll just be waiting years and years for that job to come up near you. So don't let, there's always going to be maybe someone that pips you to the post with their experience, but the more experience you put on that CV, the better your CV will be. It'll be in line to get that interview.
That's really good advice. That's
definitely
brilliant.
Cool. What a great interview that was.
Yeah, really good. I think it's really interesting to get that insight of zoos actually, and how much they do for conservation at Grassroots, so breeding programs, and especially as well with education. That's just, I know that a lot of people are against zoos, but I think that's quite insightful. And obviously you can learn more about actually the role of zoos as well. If you sort of further on.
And sorry, and Shaldon Wildlife Trust is really well worth a visit. It's like something quite different to other zoos and similar places.
Definitely, you really feel. I think it's. They are a bastion for small zoos, but I think their location as well makes it really special. They've obviously got some really special animals in there. A lot of them are very unique, but its setting actually, because it's set in a woodland, and it's true what you're saying. It's quite a unique experience. They've got an amazing gift shop there as well. It's crammed. It's like Aladdin's cave. So yeah, it's definitely well worth a visit.
Yeah, I loved my visit there, and I'd like to go again soon.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so the next interview is with two National Trust volunteers, Karen and Julie. They volunteer for the North Cornwall kind of coast path team. I, for a year, spent time there as a full-time volunteer, and I loved spending every minute with these people. They're just inspiring individuals. They've both been volunteers for a long time. They put a lot in, and they also get a lot out. So I think it's a really good insight into the benefits of volunteering.
Any creature, animal, mammal, marine, whatever, what would you be?
Dolphin.
Any reason?
Because I love the outdoors so much, and I feel like they're just young and free, and they're always full of fun, and it's sort of, I feel affinity with them.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah, and I just think they're beautiful animals, to be honest. I belong to the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Julie?
Yeah, I'd probably say my dog. Or if it's a wild animal, probably something like a butterfly. I mean, they're just the distance that they travel with those little
Amazing.
wings.
I
Just
know.
nuts, isn't it? Absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
It's amazing, isn't it?
You know, it's yeah.
Cool, thank you. Good answers. Okay, so my next question is, so you guys have been long-term volunteers with the National Trust. I'd just like if you could kind of expand on kind of what your roles are and kind of what you kind of do when you're out with like the rangers, that kind of thing.
So yeah, I'm a volunteer ranger. I've been volunteering for just 8 years and 2 weeks now.
Brilliant.
And the role involves almost anything from, say yesterday I was out laying rubber mat, pegging it all down, tying it all up together to make a path up to a building where at Port Gaven, where they rent out kayaks and do coasteering and stuff like that. The path had all got really muddy, so we put compost in all the holy bits in the mats and then laid it with grass seed, and that then is going to hopefully stop the path getting all churned up with mud. But I've been gorse cutting, I've learned how to hang gates, how to do fencing, just shoveling gravel, filling up potholes in the ground, anything and everything, cleaning tools. It's such a wide variety, and I think, yeah, it's always interesting, put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough. I could go on forever, really.
Wow, well, let Julie have a go.
Yeah.
Well, it was Karen that actually got me into volunteering with the trust, because when we first moved down here, we'd go to some events and Karen was always there, and so we always started having a chat. And then yeah, I started going out volunteering, and again, you know, for me, everybody is sort of, you've all got a common interest, but of course everybody's different, so you just learn so much. I mean, I didn't actually learn how to use a spade properly until I was shoveling the darn grit, you know, and all of a sudden I realized that I was doing it a much better way. You know, I've learned to use tools that I'd never even heard of, you know, like kind of, you know, putting in posts. You know, it's one thing looking at the length of your post, but then when you realize a third of it has got to go in the ground, that's sometimes a bit daunting, especially when it's bedrock.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I've been doing you know, some path surveys as well to make sure that gates and steps are where they should be and the condition that they're in. But again, fencing, making boardwalks. At the moment, hedge laying. We've done some hedge laying. We've also done some Cornish hedge building, which is something that, yeah, I'm probably a bit too much of a ditherer to ever be particularly good at that. You know, it's cases, should this stone go in or shouldn't it go in? But yeah, and say cutting back stuff, making pathways, clearing pathways when they've been cut, and then realizing that, you know, if you just leave all the cuttings and everything, that's what will encourage the nettles rather than the wildflowers. So, you know, and understanding why you do things in a certain way as well. In addition, I do the dog rangering for the National Trust. So on National Trust land, we're given a jacket to wear and then talk to people with dogs, you know, especially as, you know, people that come down here on holiday don't seem to realize that our cliffs aren't fenced, and we have rabbits the size of donkeys, you know, and dogs will chase a rabbit, you know, the rabbit will pop in the hole on the edge of the cliff, and of course dog goes straight over. Dogs on beaches all during the day getting sunstroke, etc. So we have vets, you know, we can give people veterinary information, diseases that dogs can cause, cattle, etc. Advise people on that. And of course there is the proverbial, and trying to encourage people to take it home with them.
Yeah, there's no such thing as the dog poo fairy, is there?
No. Do you find that in your role doing that with the dogs, do you find that people are generally quite approachable?
No.
So there's a real sort of barrier there. It's quite difficult to have those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the usual. I mean, you know, anybody can be poopling along, you know, having a natter, and sometimes you miss it. Those are the people, if you say excuse me, are absolutely mortified, but most of the time you would be completely ignored. I mean, especially I had an incident at Lundy when I was saying to Luke about the bending over with the baby. There's a low wall, the other side it's 30-meter drop, guys, Lundy Hole.
Yeah.
And so people got 3 dogs off lead, you know, running up and down the path. And I said, yeah, please could you put them on a lead? You know, there's a big drop there. And it was like, and then one of their small dogs actually jumped up on this wall. I mean, if it had jumped over, it would have been that, you know, one of the guys that we work with had to go and retrieve a deceased dog from around there. But no, people want to be able to take their dogs, have them off lead. And obviously now we've got the nesting bird time of year. You know, you don't want dogs rampaging through fields and everything, disturbing skylarks and such like. But no, people aren't particularly open to.
It's still very valid what you do, though. It's really valuable.
Yeah, well, do you know, if I can just get people, you know, one person a month, you know, change their mind about how they behave, you know, that's good. Also, Diz and I do from the 1st of April to the 30th of September at Lundy Bay. It's the butterfly survey. We didn't do it last year because of lockdown, and we've got some parts there where the paths are very narrow. But Sarah's just in the process of finding out if that's something we can do this year.
Right.
But as Karen said, you just you learn so much about the environment, how to look after it. I mean, I'm sure Karen will agree with me. I think we're very blessed with the team that we work with as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just so appreciate us, and they include us and
look after us really well, don't they?
They are absolutely amazing.
You're part of the team
to give us information. You know, nothing is ever too much trouble to explain to us. With members of the trust, they sort of all have their specialisms, but they share that with you. And they also appreciate that not everybody has the same abilities. You know, I mean, Karen and I often say that the two of us probably together
make up one Tom,
half of Tom even, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because we're older, so we're a little limited in what we can do sometimes, but then with age comes dexterity for doing some other things better.
Yeah.
It's very much horses for courses. So, and it's something where age doesn't have to be a barrier either, because there's always something you can do, and if it's something you can't do on your own, people will help you.
I was going to slip in like a little extra question. I was going to say, what would you sort of say to people if they thought that they might want to have a go at volunteering for the National Trust? What would you say? What would be your advice?
Bring them up and ask, because there's always something you can do. Exactly. There's I mean, I've got friends at the moment that have been asking, and a couple of them, they say, one the day before yesterday said, well, I've got back problems and things, but I said, well, ring the team in your area, because they're not North Cornwall, but I said, and just ask them, because I said, you know, they really are very good, the National Trust. looking after volunteers on the whole. So
there's always something
so,
that somebody could do.
Yeah, absolutely. And they look at our us and then give us tasks. You know, it's like when they send out the weekly email. Sarah said the other day she needed somebody that could be digging and lugging because she can't do it at the moment. And I thought, well, I know sometimes what digging and lugging can mean, and I can do some of it, but not all of it. So I went out on a different day, and like yesterday, I was completely involved all day long. So they try and accommodate your strengths and weaknesses, and they are a particularly good team.
Yeah, they're great. It's a great team. I really enjoyed my time with the North Cornwall team. So from your really great answers there, we can kind of see that you give a lot to the organisation and to maintaining the footpaths and the various kind of the land that the trust owns. But what does volunteering give you personally? What kind of do you get back from it?
Well, for me, and I say this as somebody, I work part-time 3 days a week. It's my favorite day of the week. It gives me companionship. It gives me working with like-minded people. And I mean, I have to stress that I've been doing this for 8 years with a part-time job. So, and I don't miss unless I absolutely have to. And then I really miss it. So, yeah, it gives me the camaraderie of like-minded people. It helps me to learn new skills. It, what else does it do? It's a green gym. It keeps me very, very fit. You know, I think Jules and I, even though we say we're, you know, ladies of a certain age, but I think we're in pretty good nick really for our age. And I'm sure a lot of that is to do with volunteering because it's a very physical thing. So yeah, it just gives you so much. We have a social life from it.
Yeah.
You know, there's times when you get involved in other activities, like when we have Poleseth Marine Discovery Day, or when we used to do the Port Isaac Big Swim. You get to help out and things like that, and then join in. I mean, I've got together with Sarah and organised camping trips with other people that are part of the trust. And again, for me, because I live on my own and I don't have a partner, it gives me a real sense of belonging because I work from home. So although I love my job, this is my real sense of belonging. And I think above and beyond anything else, the most important thing for me, and this is what I did an article about why I volunteer a few years ago, and it's giving something back to the county that I love. I've lived here for 25 years and it's by far and away the happiest period of my life. And that, without a shadow of a doubt, has come from living in Cornwall because I love wildlife and the outdoors so much. And it's my way of giving back. And people think, oh, aren't you committed? You're this, you're that, aren't you good? But I get so much from it. I get a huge amount.
Sounds like a lifeline.
It is. I can't measure it.
Yeah.
I'd be brokenhearted, to be honest, and that's not an understatement if I couldn't volunteer.
Brilliant answer. How are you going to follow that, Julie?
Well, yes, everything that Karen said.
Yeah.
From my personal, I mean, to be a part of such a great bunch of people is very rewarding. Yeah, so the skills that you learn, the information that you learn, the people that you spend your time with. Say you've got this one, you know, we all volunteer for the trust, but everybody's got their sort of outside lives as well, you know, and yeah, other people's lives. Yeah, it's really interesting because it is all sort of linked in. You know, you tend to find that people that do the volunteering, you know, there's a lot of us that are retired, but yeah, you just get so much out of it. And I think we probably, I say that the team that we work with are very, very appreciative. and sometimes it's almost like they really appreciate us, but I think we probably appreciate them more. It's just brilliant. And
they're our friends, aren't they?
yeah, and I say it's not ageist, sexist. You know, somebody, yeah, sometimes be handier to have a bit of younger muscle on tap. But you know, if somebody has got, I mean, we've got one lady that volunteers who she's probably in her 70s, I think, and she doesn't do the physical side of things, but she does bird surveys, dormouse surveys, butterfly surveys, you know, all of that sort of thing. And then if we've got sort of people from outside sectors coming in, like we had a lady come in, one day we were looking at wildflowers in crop fields, because from that they could tell what the soil was doing and what the soil needed. Now, the names of these plants, you know, was just in a 10-minute, you know, it was like, oh, no idea. But this lady that volunteers is absolutely amazing with her knowledge. And, you know, she certainly with me spent a lot of time, you know, is it this? Is it that? So you learn so much from each other as well. And yeah, you just get a really fantastic, I say network, I don't like those sort of words, but you do get to know some absolutely amazing, lovely people. And, you know, that's not all bright sunny days when you're out, you know, there's been a lot of mud. But the people that you're with, it just makes it thoroughly enjoyable.
You forget
you know,
all about that
teamworking.
sometimes.
I mean, that for me is why, you know, lockdown, obviously team working isn't great. So I've sort of taken a bit of a back step apart from sort of doing one-to-one days out. But again, the trust need people to do so much stuff, which doesn't always have to be digging, lugging, or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
it's just such a wide variety.
Yeah, it's such a great team, and there's so many benefits from it, isn't there?
I think the trust as an organisation, obviously they've come under massive pressures this last year. You know, because most of the places they get their money from haven't been open. But they do seem as an organisation to offer a lot of support to volunteers as well. There's a lot of sort of useful information on the internal intranet, etc. And they make their volunteers feel a part of the organisation.
Brilliant.
You don't feel like you just.
That's it. Honestly, as I could say, you're making me want to join. Actually.
Yeah, you should. And we're just so lucky that we have the absolute best. I mean, Mike, Tom, and Sarah just really give it their all with keeping volunteers in the loop and everything. I mean, they just are fantastic, and it's down to their their personalities.
Yeah,
I think that we enjoy it so much because they just do put the time in, but then they get they get back what they put in. So
it says a lot about that team by the fact that it hasn't changed really since I first started volunteering not that I am at the moment, but that was 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still the same team. It shows you that the passion and the kind of the commitment is really there.
And the same volunteers. They keep their volunteers.
And the volunteers.
Yeah, they do.
But then the next team up, the Bute-Moor and Stowe, I mean, they did their volunteering very differently. They'd only do like two, whereas our team would generally do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday every week. Their team would do 2 days a month, but then they'd have sort of like 25, 30 volunteers come out on those days.
Different approach.
So but
when I started
again, Karen.
I was just going to say, Jules, when I mean, it's not about just even keeping the volunteers, it's how much it's expanded, because I can't think how many people was there when you first started, but I think when I started there was only about 4 of us really on a regular basis, and now you could probably say there's a dozen of us that are out pretty regularly. Yeah,
they've got 50 on the books, because obviously there's the conservation, you've got the people that come out doing the conservation work, you've got the dog rangers, you've got litter pickers, we've also got footpath rangers as well.
I was just thinking about you know, the one that I know, there's about a dozen just for the you know, so yeah, it's even more.
I guess we better ask you some more questions before we run out of time.
Sorry.
All right, no, it's fine. So I think it's our last question, isn't it? We sort of tailored it around you guys to, have you got any tips just for people, you know, in their own homes, their gardens, whatever? What can they do to help conservation and, you know, biodiversity? Just because a lot of people think, you know, it's such a big deal, isn't it? And what can I do? You know, can I make a difference? What sort of things would you suggest that
I'd say everybody can make a difference, even if it's just something really small. I mean, my back garden is not huge, and yes, I'm really passionate about things, but I don't have huge amounts of time for gardening because I go out and do the volunteering and stuff. So, but if you do things like they say have a little pond, even if it's just sinking a washing up bowl into the ground, because it will attract wildlife. Don't use chemicals, so things like weeds, you can use a kettle of boiling water and pour it all over your weeds. That's what I do down the drive and everywhere. You don't need to do things like that.
So I was hearing about somebody now is just that I know that we were talking to earlier actually has stopped putting slug pellets down.
Yeah.
He made the connection that actually the hedgehogs, it will encourage the hedgehogs because they'll eat the slugs, and it's that whole, you know,
trying to get a cyclical
thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's so many little things. I mean, there's a lot of leaflets and things around as well. I mean, I collect, and I'm not suggesting everybody would, but I collect seeds when I'm out walking on the coast and scatter them around the garden. There's lots of seeds that you can buy that are things for wildlife. So even if you just got a tub and just chucked a few seeds in there, you'd be amazed the sort of wildlife you get. And I mean, it's really interesting. I've only got a tiny pond, but I've had dragonflies, and you get pond skaters, water boatmen. I've had hedgehogs. I've had a bat flying over the garden because of the insects.
Wow.
You know, it's it's really good fun.
Cool. And Julie?
Yeah, same as Karen. I mean, you know, our back garden is tiny, but you can always be mindful when, you know, if you are going to plant up your tubs or borders, you know, buy plants that are bee friendly, butterfly friendly. You know, just have an old tree trunk tucked to one side, and eventually the insects and everything will come into that. We have a hedgehog that comes in the garden. Obviously, we've got briar as well, and hedgehogs need to hibernate. And I was down at Port Gaven one day, and there was a couple of old ridge tiles to one side. You know, I just said, you know, do you still need these? No, we don't. So brought those home, and that serves as something that the hedgehog could go into to either hibernate. You know, you don't need to buy expensive hedgehog houses. You know, an old plant pot turned upside down with some
absolutely
things.
There's this push as well to make so everybody can make a little hole in their garden, you know, their fence.
Yes, our gate was hung higher so they can get in and out.
Get in and out.
Like a natural corridor so that they can sort of free their passage up. Yeah. Great.
Okay, so that was Julie and Karen there talking to us about why they enjoy volunteering and the reasons for it. And I really, really enjoyed that interview. just so much passion came through, and just got to find out loads of different aspects of what volunteering means to them.
Mm. Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's something that anyone can do. It's free, and you get so many benefits from it. So yeah, I'd recommend someone who's never tried kind of being part of a volunteer team like that before, outdoors, give it a go.
Definitely. Really good advice.
Cool.
So our last guest is Ross Wheeler. Ross is an environmental officer for P&O Cruise Line. He's also, in his spare time, an expedition tour guide for ocean-wide expeditions. Ross lives in Newquay in Cornwall. He's also a person that's got a rich personal conservation work history before his present positions with Ocean-wide and P&O. Ross graduated with a master's in marine biology from Plymouth University, and he has an extremely keen interest in wildlife photography, which obviously his travels, you know, gets some incredible hits. Some of his captures, well, actually all of his captures are actually stunning. When he's not traveling, Ross enjoys spending time at home in Cornwall with his family, and he likes surfing as well.
Yeah, well, it's such a good interview, this one. This is quite different from some of the other ones we've got.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the environmental kind of information that he gives us and kind of makes us aware of in terms of the cruise ships and things it's really fascinating. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So Ross, if you could be an animal, any animal, what would you be and why?
Goodness,
Puts him on the spot.
that is a good question. You know, I don't know, to be honest. Maybe a sloth. Sleep 20 hours a day and not feel bad about it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're quite mysterious as well, sloths, aren't they? We don't understand some of their behavior as well. So
amazing animals, yeah, incredible, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to be a sloth and just laze around in the trees all day and sleeping, you know.
Yeah, me too.
So our next question is, so just sort of a bit of background. So you're an environmental officer working for a cruise ship company, but also in your spare time, you're actually a tour guide for ocean-wide expeditions as well. So our question is, could you tell us just a little bit about what you do sort of on the ship when you're working for the cruise ship company, and just a little bit of kind of what you do when you're with Ocean-wide in your spare time?
So with the cruise ships, I'm now actually working as a fleet environmental officer, which means I go around to different cruise ships, training environmental officers, helping out, and basically ensuring that all the ships that go on are compliant with all kind of international regulations, corporate regulations, national regulations, you know, all the different environmental regulations that there are in the world. Training the crew members, like I said, not just the environmental officers, all the crew members on board, overseeing the waste management on board, a lot of technical stuff in the engine room. We work very closely with the engineers and all the kind of environmental equipment, you know, because obviously you've got the kind of the sewage side of things, you've got the emissions, you've got the bill type of things, you know, it's all the stuff that's happening in the background of a cruise ship, basically, all the operational side of a cruise ship that's involved with the environmental side of shipping, all the legal side of things, all the legal documents and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a very varied role on the cruise ships, very much behind the scenes, strictly environmental and compliance related.
So you're sorry to interrupt. So the reason why you actually went in, well, not the reason why, but you did your BSc and your MSc in marine biology, didn't you? So that is where your sort of standpoint was of your educational journey to enable you to be in this situation, in this job role now.
It's weird, really, because I didn't know this role existed until I applied for it. I did like I said, environmental courses, a degree and masters, and I just happened to fall into the marine sector when I was doing my previous job in the offshore industry, and then that kind of one thing leads to another type thing. And then I ended up working somehow on a cruise ship. I never thought I'd work on a cruise ship before, but then here we are, So, and then that ultimately, that lifestyle of working on cruise ships, the time on, time off type lifestyle helped me develop and let me move into my other work, which I do on the expedition ships as well. So it kind of opened up that door for me as well.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you do with ocean-wide expeditions there?
So with ocean-wide expeditions, basically, the expedition scene, on the kind of cruising scene, really, it's kind of expedition ships are increasing massively. They were definitely before pre-COVID anyway. The industry was growing massively. It's kind of like an alternative thing to cruising, a much more adventurous, going to the far reaches of the world and taking people there. So I work as how to describe it, kind of an expedition guide, a wildlife guide, the general kind of role on board. And the purpose of the actual trips are to really educate people as much as possible. So it's the trips to the Antarctic region and the Arctic region predominantly with this company that I work for. And for most people, obviously, going on these trips, it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. So this company really specializes in educating the people going to these regions of the world. If you're going to be once in a lifetime, you want to be teaching them all about every single bit of wildlife, climate change, geology, glaciology, all of those kind of things. So they have a lot of different specialists on board working in the role that I do as an expedition guide. And my own side of things, I would specialize more in the wildlife and, doing wildlife photography with the guests and teaching them. I do a lot of lectures on different things, really, whether it's kind of, just identification of the animals that you're seeing in these regions, talking about fishing, whaling, pressures on the ecosystems. So kind of do a wide range of lectures. And like I said, I'm part of a team of guides who, specialize in different things, really. So it's basically these trips are going to these parts of the world, and then we are there to really kind of give them the full kind of picture
Kind
and
of facilitate the understanding. Yeah.
So it's really good, really enjoyable, very different to the cruise ships. But like I said, I'm kind of in between both of them at the moment. And
you're going off again in July, aren't you, onto another expedition with them? Is that right?
Yeah. So the expedition industry obviously has been hit by COVID pretty bad, just like the cruise industry, like the whole tourism industry across the world has been hit. So they've now pushed their sailing back to August. So I'm hoping to join them for a short time in August in Svalbard. And then next year, 2022, hopefully things will be looking up again. And I'll be doing 8 or 9 weeks of them, Antarctic, South Georgia kind of area, that season, and then we'll see what happens from there.
That's something to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, I hope so.
So it sounds like your life's kind of half split on land and on sea. Is there one that you prefer?
Good question. Yeah. I would actually say, it's a weird way of life, but you've got to be a certain type of person who will work 9 months at sea a year.
Yeah.
It's every working on living on land and at sea has its pros and cons, but here I am, spending nine months away. So it just is how it is. It's just what I'm used to. It's certainly not the 9 to 5, which I don't think I could do. So. Yeah, a weird lifestyle, but
it's great. And yeah, I could imagine in another world I would probably quite like that as well. But
well, this is this is something which I really want to encourage students to say that the expedition side of things, from your own perspectives, meeting a lot of students who are wildlife orientated and really into wildlife, and being an expedition guide in the Arctic and Antarctic was something I never ever thought I would ever do ever in my life. But I can really see it as a growing industry, and I can see opportunities for other students getting into that industry for sure, and being able to visit these regions. It's not impossible by any means. It's very much achievable. And then, I would like to help other students or other, people get into this if they really wanted to, because it is an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah, that is, and wanting to share that knowledge and everything and be really helpful. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So sounds like an incredibly varied role, but is there anything that is kind of your favorite part of the role, something you really just look forward to every week, or is it just a theme or an aspect?
For the expedition side of things.
No, either, both.
I mean, for the cruise ships, the good thing is really thinking of ideas which could help the environmental performance of these ships. Just the big topic recently has been single-use plastics. So having an impact of working with crew members on board, working with the ships, and formalizing incentives that really reduce the environmental impact, or can reduce single-use plastics on board, and get other crew really kind of involved and interested in it as well, because we're working with nationalities from all over the world. So to get them interested and enthusiasm to really kind of improve the environmental performance of the ships is what I aim for. With the expedition side of things, you're going to these incredible places, like you said. I mean, you got to pinch yourself really to think you're able to visit these regions. So every day is completely different, and the wildlife is just incredible. So it's just being able to visit the regions is enough for me. To get paid is a whole nother bonus.
To wake up in the morning and just see a whale outside of your porthole, that's just
incredible.
Must be you have to
woken up and there's killer whales outside.
How can you beat that?
Just going back a step just slightly, when you were saying about the environmental aspect on cruise ships, am I right in thinking that not all companies actually employ this situation, or do they now, has that changed? Have they now do they all take responsibility for waste, and how does
it's an interesting one. The bigger companies, the bigger cruise ship companies definitely do have these roles on board now, and they've been around for a while. Going to the importance of the environmental aspect of things now, with regards to legislation, and all the procedures and everything that's happening around the world environmentally orientated. Having an dedicated environmental officer on board is becoming the norm. But there are a lot of smaller cruise ship companies that don't have this role on board. So whilst there are rules and regulations and laws which you have to abide to, it really depends, how how they kind of perceive that, and how they do react to those laws and regulations on board. I don't know, but it definitely is enough to keep you busy working every single day that you're on board. So there's a lot of work behind it. So it's, like I said, it's not on every single cruise ship company, but it's hard to imagine, in my eyes, not this type of role on board.
So just sort of for the layman sort of aspect of this is, so it's things like, isn't it, little packets of, you have a meal on a cruise ship, you get a little packet of tomato sauce, where do these things end up type, it's down to that, isn't it, really, at the to sort of, to the layman looking at
it is and it's interesting, cruise ships, because there's a lot of quick wins like that. You can eliminate single-use plastics relatively easily. The biggest challenge is getting around public health as well. Unfortunately, the great thing about single-use plastics is, you know, from a health perspective or sanitation perspective, it's great. You know, like packets of tomato ketchup instead of having, you know, a little bowl which you know, spoon and, you know, or anything like that. You know, or little plastic sachets of milk compared to a jug of milk.
Yeah.
Hygiene-wise, you know, single-use plastics can't be beaten. So you really got to find alternatives to that. So those are the quick wins on the cruise ships, but you can't forget that, you know, cruise ships, or the cruise ship industry is, like most industries, damaging to the environment. You know, whilst we can take away single-use plastics, we're still pumping out on a normal operation 80, 100 tons of fuel a day, you know, to run these ships, which is high sulfur fuel. So there's so many different aspects of environmental impacts associated with not only the cruise ship industry, but the shipping industry in general, you know. So the scale from environmental, you know, issues or impacts associated with them is huge. You know, we can be talking, I can be having a meeting about, like I said, straws, removing straws on board, and then 10 minutes later, I'll be down in the engine room looking at the sewage system or the food waste system, or, you know, the engines and the emissions. So it's very varied on board a ship.
That's really interesting.
Brilliant.
That's great. Thank you. Have you got the last question, or have I?
You can have the honour.
Okay, so just wanted to sort of ask you, do you have any tips for sort of conservation successes going forward? So this could be, you know, people just at home, you know, what can they do? Because a lot of people think, oh, this is just such a disaster, but what can I do, you know, to help this situation? Or indeed, maybe, you know, have you got any tips for perhaps students or people that actually want to get involved in doing something in conservation?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you know, it's a tough time for everybody, especially, you know, students not getting the full university experience, which they're having, you know, they're spending a lot of time at home. Everybody's in lockdown. But I've been looking myself at a lot of online courses. You know, there's so many online courses you can do at the moment, which, you know, as a young student, you know, just rack up the courses, rack up your experiences. Get tickets and things, do whatever you can do, even if you don't necessarily see the kind of impact of that straight away. You know, you might end up using that certificate in 5-10 years time. You don't know, you know, because you might not be getting it straight away. The rewards from it straight away doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, you know. So yeah, I mean, I myself have been doing a couple of online courses and keeping myself busy, especially when I'm on the ship in the evenings, you know, nothing much to do. So I definitely recommend people doing that. And, you know, don't switch off completely during this time. Try and use it to your advantage and use the time wisely. But in general, especially with students, you know, when I was at university about 10 years ago now, you know, I made the mistake of thinking, oh, I've got a degree, that's it, happy days, I'm going to get a job. And then it didn't work out like that. Even when I had my master's, I thought, well, you've got a master's, I'll be able to get a job, no problem. And then I spent the next year working in Tesco, which no problem working at Tesco, you know, but wasn't necessarily this kind of, you know, going to save the world jobs straight away. You know?
Eco warrior,
You know, so it's about, like I said, making the most of your time during university. You know, appreciate it. It's a hard time at the moment with COVID, but you can't underestimate the importance of networking and volunteer work. You know, setting up your CV, courses, whatever you can do, because having a degree or just a degree will not be enough. You know, you have to get the full picture here. You know, employers will be wanting everything, you know, from you. So, you know, appreciate that volunteer work is a financial strain, and it's not easy to do because, you know, in the day you've got to live as well.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, and you know, but whatever you can do which might help, you know, like I said, even if it's not an immediate reward straight away, it could help you several years down the line. So just being in that kind of mindset, appreciating that nothing happens overnight, You know, when I was trying to get into the expedition work, I was already thinking about it in 2 or 3 years beforehand to see what can I do to get into this industry and put myself in a position where I'm qualified and able to do this job. And then just working away for the next few years. You know, I was doing other jobs, but I still had that kind of goal in my head. Is in a couple of years' time, I want to be doing this, and then it happened. You know, so don't be disgruntled if nothing happens straight away, because it doesn't. Set yourself goals of 2-3 years ahead if you have to, and just work. You know, and do whatever you can. You know, if you've got to work at a supermarket for the next 12 months, so be it. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
Use the cash that you get from that job and put it towards courses or certificates or whatever you might need to reach your goal.
I think that was a really good ending, actually, to our little program. We'd really like to thank all of our lovely guests, actually, for taking part, and also our student program lead at Cornwall College, Jason Burt, and actually all the other science module tutors for their support during our degree journey. And I think our program just kind of shows that you really can make a difference to conservation. You know, it might just even be just simply eliminating palm oil as a consumer from your shopping choices, and just basically staying curious really to the natural world. And you know, as we've said before, it can increase your own sense of well-being. And you never know, this is a 2021 program. Maybe it might be quite nice to do this again with some different guests and perhaps some more hobbyists as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you never know, you might see us again in 2022.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much for watching. And if you've got any comments or anything, or any questions or anything, we'll endeavour to answer them. If you just pop them in the chat below, then we'll do our best.
Yeah, thank you from me as well to all the guests. You were all great, and yeah, me and Ali will make sure we put some links in our video so that you can go and check out the Gorilla Conservation Coffee, look into some volunteering opportunities, and follow some amazing photographers like Ross on Instagram.
Absolutely. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.